Hello, everyone. Let's get this webinar started. First, hello and welcome. We're excited to have you with us today. I'm Jeff Sullivan, Director of Content and Community at StarTech.com. I'd like to thank you for spending your valuable time with us today. Today's topic is about an IT pro's guide to enabling a multi-monitor workstation. And we'll cover the various technologies that you might use for yourself or your end user deployments. Before I get started, I'd like to share a couple of things with housekeeping and then today's agenda. There will be some polls. I'm going to pop those up on the screen. I'd love for you to participate and engage with us. Let us know, what's going on in your environment. We build these webinars for you, and we'd love to get your feedback on how we can do better. And we'll also have some questions and a survey at the end of the webinar that goes into a little bit more detail. And you can also let us know what type of topics you'd like to hear in the future and what you felt about today's presentation. There's also a Q&A section, and I'm going to ask the experts that we have live with us today your questions. So post those in the Q&A, and we'll get those asked. And then finally, if you have to drop early, or maybe if you started late, there will be a replay available at the end of this broadcast that we'll keep online. And if you have questions or thoughts, or just want to reach out about today's topic or anything else, we launched a brand new IT Pro community in March of this year. It's called community.startech.com. We've also have an email inbox that you can hit us at community@startech.com. All right, so the agenda, you can see that on the screen. We're going to start with kind of setting the stage. What is it that we're talking about here? What are the things that you might think about? And then we'll go into the various technologies. And then at the end, we'll dive in on the question and answer with our panel of experts, Michael and Malcolm, which is a good time to go ahead and go into the introduction. So Michael, how about we start with you? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name's Michael Munn. I'm a research and development specialist at StarTech.com. I've worked on many products, but I help mainly with docking stations to get the docking station solutions onto the market for our customers.
Excellent, thank you. Malcolm, your turn. Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Malcolm Donaldson, and I'm a technical content specialist here at StarTech.com, where I've worked to develop connectivity solutions for IT pros and also to create technical content for knowledge base articles, videos, and other resources.
Thanks, Malcolm. And those of you that watch our YouTube channel or maybe our blogs, you've probably seen quite a bit of Malcolm lately. I encourage you to go in and drop on those properties if you haven't seen them yet. Okay, Malcolm, we're going to start with you today. Let's set the stage. What is the problem we're trying to solve?
Sure. So more and more multi-monitor workstations are in demand by end users and by the IT pros that support them. And so what we're looking at today is three quite similar, but yet very distinct display technologies that enable multi-monitor workstations. And so we're going to be looking at those technologies, why you might choose one versus the other for a particular deployment. And we're also going to be talking a bit about display adapters, multi-port adapters, even full docking station solutions that will integrate some of these different technologies.
Makes sense. Thank you. So, Michael, I'm actually running a single external display because I've got a big monitor here and then connected to my laptop through a multi-port adapter. I know we're focusing on multi-monitors, but maybe you can talk for a minute on single monitor setups and what people might do there.
Yeah, for sure. So for single monitor setups, obviously the most basic way to connect is through a cable, such as a HDMI cable, DisplayPort cable. But as you know, a lot of newer laptops and the slim profile laptops are going with a Type-C connector. So for a Type-C connector, you'll need some kind of usually adapter to go from the Type-C port to HDMI, DisplayPort, VGA even you could connect to if you have such thing as legacy monitors. But there's also the option of if your port, let's say your connection port, your HDMI port was damaged, you could also use a USB-A to video adapter, which is using graphics, USB graphics technology to get the output to the monitor.
Awesome, thank you. Malcolm, before we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of the conversation today, how about, a word on operating systems and host computer, or I guess is that a significant consideration when we're picking a solution?
Yeah, that's a great question to consider right off the top. And we're going to be talking about operating system support throughout the webinar, because the operating system on the host computer or computers is definitely a significant consideration when you're choosing between various technology options that are available. So we'll come back to operating systems, but off the top, it's definitely good to keep in mind that that is a key consideration as we're looking at different solutions here, for sure.
Okay, well, let's do our first poll, and let me put this up on the screen. And so the question we're asking here, as we're about to get into the main topic, is which display technology have you used before? And what we have there is MST, USB display graphics, Thunderbolt. Maybe you're not using any of these. Maybe it's a basic cable like what Michael was talking about a minute ago, or maybe you're not sure. And we'll let that run for a few seconds. As a reminder, if you've got a question, put it in the Q&A. We'll ask Michael and Malcolm at the end of this webinar. All right, got quite a bit of participation here. This is great. Give it another few seconds, as I see they're still coming in. All right, let's call it. We're going to end it there. I appreciate everyone who's responded, and I'm going to put that up on the screen. And so it looks like the majority of users that are attending the call today anyway are using USB display graphics. And we'll talk about that here in a minute, followed by Thunderbolt and then MST. Great, thank you. Thanks for everyone that answered that poll. Okay. So Michael, this first section's for you. What does MST stand for, and how does it work to enable video?
So MST stands for, as the slide says, multi-stream transport. So it was a technology that was initially released in the spec for DisplayPort 1.2, and it enables the connectivity of using one cable to output multiple streams of video to a device that can break it out into different setup. If we just go to the next slide, Jeff, we can see the example here. From your GPU, you have the different data going out to the GPU, from the GPU to this connector, and then it hits the MST hub. And what the MST hub does is it takes that information in that stream and splits it out into the two different displays.
Excellent. Follow-on question, does MST require any additional drivers, or are there other considerations?
So the nice thing about MST is it doesn't actually require any drivers. The drivers are built into for the graphics card of the GPU. But one thing to consider though is that you have to be running a Windows computer or a Chrome OS laptop, just because MST is currently not supported on Mac systems. And yeah, depending on the laptop's power of the laptop's GPU, you could support up to 2 to 3, up to even 4 displays connected. So it really depends on the bandwidth available from the port and from the laptop itself.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to USB display graphics, or what most of us think of as DisplayLink, but there's other things there. Malcolm, what's the advantage of this option when it comes to enabling multiple monitors?
Sure. So a major advantage of a USB display graphics solution is that they have their own graphics engine. And so that comes in the form of a chipset in the adapter itself. And those could be from a variety of different companies, including DisplayLink, Silicon Motion, or Trigger. And this type of solution works over either a USB-A or USB-C connection. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but it's definitely a great option for a hot desk environment where there might be a mix of operating systems or a mix of different models of host that may have different capabilities as far as port availability goes. From our basic diagram here, you can see in a simple way, the way these kind of graphics work is basically it's operating system USB display drivers work together to send the data over the USB controller, USB connection, and then out to the USB display adapter, which then itself drives the external displays. So something to keep in mind with this particular option is that it often is a way to overcome system display limitations. It can increase system performance by really enhancing the display capabilities of a system. And so a great option to consider when, like we mentioned, there's a mix of operating systems. And we're going to be covering that a little bit later on as well, kind of a grid or a diagram to explain the differences OS support wise for these types of solutions.
Great. And I asked Michael this one, but what about drivers? What about OS support?
So USB display graphics options do require that drivers are installed. Increasingly, some are available even through Windows Update, and so that process can be very straightforward, but it's something to keep in mind, especially when deploying it across a number of systems and different user privileges, for example, that they do require drivers to be installed. But it definitely can be considered a universal connection option, and it can definitely reduce confusion between different hosts and different operating systems, simply because it doesn't require that DP alt mode from a USB-C port or a Thunderbolt port, for example. It can work with a wide variety of host configurations.
Great, makes sense. I think it's time for our next poll. Put this up there. The question is, how many monitors do you or your end users use? So if you're, if you're an IT pro deploying solutions, what's your typical user have? Or if you're an end user or business user, how many are you using? I personally, at this location, I work at a couple of different locations, and at this one, I've got one big monitor, which is nice to work on sometimes, but typically I need at least two. And so I imagine that's what the poll results are going to show. Malcolm, how many monitors are you typically running?
So in the past, I've had a triple monitor setup. Currently, I have a single ultra wide display plus the laptop. So
makes sense. How about you, Michael? What are you rocking today?
I actually use a 4K monitor when I'm in my home office. When I'm at work, I like using two monitors. Yeah, usually the common setup. But at home, I find the 4K is large enough to display all the windows, and I also have the laptop screen as an extra.
Same. Yeah, when I say two, it's really three because I have the laptop that I'll put some things on there. Okay, I'm going to stop the poll and then I'll share the results. As expected, 75% of our audience is running at least two monitors. Kind of surprising. I didn't think three would come that high, but at 16%, 4% with one, four or more. There's some power users out there. Awesome. Thanks for participating in that poll. Let's go ahead and get into the next topic. And Malcolm, back at you. There are lots of power users out there. And as we probably just saw in that poll, how can Thunderbolt unlock performance?
Sure. So Thunderbolt is really the ultimate in connectivity when it comes to connecting external displays and even other peripherals. And when it's connected to a Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4 laptop that supports those dual external monitors, it can support up to dual 4K 60 directly right from the laptop's GPU. And so that is a significant consideration, especially if it's paired with a high-end workstation. You're able to take advantage of that uncompressed video. It's great for content creation, video editing, other applications, engineering, CAD design, that type of thing. So that combination really means it's a great go-to choice when performance is key.
That's a great point. And I should point out that Malcolm's actually written on this topic quite a bit recently. So community.startech.com, there's a great article on Thunderbolt. I think there's a couple of blogs as well on, on the StarTech.com blog property. So make sure you check those out. And actually, they're going to be when this webinar is over, you're going to get an email and there'll be links to some of that information. So, Michael, what other features does a Thunderbolt-based device offer?
So the nice thing about Thunderbolt is that it can support even the transport of PCI Express data. So as you can see from the diagram, you have the two streams of the display data going into the Thunderbolt controller, and you have a third stream from the PCI Express that goes into the controller. That is all combined into the Thunderbolt connection over the protocol and the transport layer. And then at the end, you have, depending on the type of adapter, dock, device you're using, you have your display broken out, but you also can pull out the PCI Express lanes, which allows you to have high-speed storage, such as like an M.2 drive connected, depending on the docking station or adapter you're using, which it's a great option for performance users to access their data high speed, just as it would be inside the laptop itself. One thing that's really good about Thunderbolt is that it has a mandatory certification program. So whenever you see a product with a Thunderbolt logo on the market, you know that it's been tested by a third party, which Apple and Intel both require testing of the devices and ensure broad compatibility. One thing to note on Thunderbolt is just to make sure your system is always up to date with the latest drivers available. They do sometimes updates for the controllers, but most times out of the box, it will work right away.
I think we're hitting on that updates thing quite a bit here today. That's funny. And yeah, that is a good point about certification being required. There's a level of trust when you see that logo on there. Okay. As a reminder to the audience, we've already seen a number of good question and answers, and we will be asking those at the end. So please keep those coming. And let's Malcolm, at the beginning or earlier in this call, you talked about operating system being key. Can you summarize the compatibility of some of these technologies we've been discussing?
Definitely. And so we have a bit of a grid there on screen showing the three primary operating systems that we're considering here today. So Windows, Mac OS, and Chrome OS. And I'll just walk through those three technologies then down the left side that we've been talking about so far. So MST, or multi-stream transport, we see is supported on Windows, and Chrome OS not currently supported on Mac OS for multi-monitor setups. USB external graphics. So depending on the chip, those, as was mentioned, are a great solution for a mixed environment. So we're looking at support for Windows, Mac OS, and Chrome OS. Just to note there on Mac OS, MCT trigger-based adapters aren't currently supported on Mac OS, but otherwise a great option across the board there for an environment that may have those mixed setups. And then when it comes to Thunderbolt, we see Windows and Mac OS systems that have Thunderbolt ports are supported. And we're seeing some new Chromebooks as well do support Thunderbolt 4. So we're seeing definitely an increase in support for that option as well. And so something to keep an eye on as we're going forward.
Great, thank you, Michael. What about MST-based solutions? When should people consider MST?
So MST is a really good solution. It's a really simple and easy solution to set up since it has no driver requirements, additional driver requirements, I should say, on the host side. Yeah, you can easily get dual 1080p monitors, and even some cases dual 4K monitors connection, all depending on the capability of the GPU that you're using. But yeah, just the advantage, there's just a note to take in mind of is obviously the lack of support on Mac OS for the MST.
Good to know. Good to know. And I saw a number of comments about MST in some of the Q&A that we may get to here at the end. All right, so for a performance-focused setup with a powerhouse, like maybe a Dell Precision or a MacBook Pro that has Thunderbolt 3 or 4, what's the best option, Michael?
I would definitely lean on Thunderbolt for that option, just because you get it will support your dual 4K monitors, uncompressed video straight from the GPU side, and even support for additional peripherals such as PCI Express-based drives, etc. So yeah, Thunderbolt is the way to go for a power user on something like that setup.
Okay, and then Malcolm, earlier in the call, you mentioned the hot desk, and I think we're all going through various versions of that. I've already talked about the multiple places that I'm working. I'm sure other people are as well. So if you're deploying to end users, where a mix of hardware and OS will be used, what's your recommendation?
So yeah, a product at a hot desk is typically a situation where you need broad hardware support and broad OS compatibility. And so a DisplayLink based choice is likely a great fit there, one of those USB external graphics options. Definitely a good way to ensure that whether a person comes in with a Windows-based system or with Mac OS, whether their system has Type-C or USB-A ports, that they're going to be able to connect and be productive in that hot desk situation. So a good option to consider there for sure.
All right, great. Let's get to our third and final poll. And while we're doing this, panelists can start digging through some of those questions that we're about to ask. That's coming up next. So the question here, which should be on your screen, is which OS do you typically use in your multi-monitor deployments? I know we had one of the questions was about the Linux, no Linux OS discussion. So maybe we can get to that in a minute, but it is on the screen here. So what do you use? I mean, for me, it's primarily Windows. I don't know. I imagine it's the same for you guys, Michael and Malcolm. Are you guys on Windows?
Yeah, Windows. For personal, I do use Mac though, actually.
Okay. Now I know we have a couple of our marketing team that is on Mac as well. Okay, give another few seconds. Okay, I think we got the majority of people have responded. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So it looks like the large majority is, 95% of our attendees today are using Windows, with a couple of votes each for Chrome, Mac, and Linux. Let's stop the poll, and now we're getting to the lightning round. This is where we're going to ask questions. I hope you guys are ready. All right, so first question for you, Michael. Would love to know if DisplayLink docks support the new DL software that can override the Apple M1 2020 chip for multiple displays. And let me just first say, glad you guys are here, because I'm not sure I could even take a chance at this one. So Michael, what do you think?
So I think they're talking about the DisplayLink. Well, they said DisplayLink graphics. So the M1 chip currently only supports one external display output. So you only can add one extra monitor to a MacBook that has an M1 chip. In the future, the new M1 Pros, they do actually support multiple outputs. But yes, DisplayLink solution would overcome the limitation from the M1 only outputting one display. And that's the M1 only outputs one display directly connected to the graphics. So okay, the USB graphics definitely opens that up for the multi users that want more than just one.
All right. And Michael, I got another one for you. Is maybe is MST only supported by DP ports?
So MST is technically only supported by DP ports, but DP ports can be disguised from USB Type-C ports. So they can look like that's the alt mode. So the display USB has different alt modes supported, and one of them is DisplayPort. So if you have a Type-C port, it likely does support US alt mode using DisplayPort. So you do require this DisplayPort connection of some kind.
Okay. Thank you. And then these are great questions, by the way, and there's still a couple coming in. All right. Why? All right. Number 3, Malcolm, this one's for you. Why did you switch to, oh, this is a personal question, Malcolm. Why did you switch to an ultra wide from your 3-monitor setup?
That's a great question. And I think it's one of those things that comes down to personal use of a particular setup. So we've talked about solutions for, a single cable connection as far as a direct monitor, maybe with an ultra wide for simplicity, or 2, 3, 4 or more. In my case, I was doing a bunch of solution testing, and it was really helpful to have this form factor of monitor to test products and to be able to have greater experience with a different combination of monitors and resolutions. And I found that it's been a really convenient option, even from a desk setup perspective. So there's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different considerations for choosing a particular setup. And yeah, a few different ones for me personally led me to the ultra wide.
Yeah, I've certainly considered it. I've seen it on the, the battle stations type threads and imagery, and certainly it's in the back of my mind. Not haven't made the move yet. All right, number 4, Malcolm, coming at you again. Your laptop has a USB-C alt mode port, and you connect a DisplayLink docking station. Do you always need to install DisplayLink drivers? And as a follow-up, or does it also work without installing these drivers, for example, with 2 or 3 external monitors?
Yeah, this is a great question, and involves a little bit of nuance is worth keeping in mind. So some docking stations, for example, will use a combination of USB-C DP alt mode outputs and DisplayLink. For example, some triple monitor docks, for example, will use that configuration. So without the DisplayLink drivers installed, that one output would still work, but the 2 additional powered by DisplayLink would not. So just because a system has DP alt mode on the USB-C port doesn't mean that a DisplayLink solution will work without drivers. So that's something to keep in mind, that they're using 2 different types of display technology. And so they're going to require different support and the same kind of considerations that we've talked about with drivers versus DP alt mode support.
The one thing to mention, though, is the next thing. A lot of, like you said before, Windows is a lot of the updates are supporting using DisplayLink drivers as an auto install. So you don't really have to always go to an external site to pull the drivers down.
Yeah, good point, for sure.
Great. All right, we've got 3 more questions. Okay, what is MCT trigger adapters? Malcolm?
Okay, so yeah, it's one of the chipset types that can be used in USB external graphics. So we mentioned DisplayLink, for example, just a moment ago, or Silicon Motion or MCT trigger, basically just 3 different possible chipsets that can be used, among others, for those USB external graphics. So that interface with the GPU on the laptop with drivers in order to output external additional displays.
Okay, moving right along. Does USB-C, or does USB-C, I'm going to read it as it, I think that, does USB-C can be used for both Thunderbolt 3 and 4? I think the question is, can USB-C used for both Thunderbolt 3 and 4?
Yeah, so both Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4 use the physical USB-C form factor. And so oftentimes you'll see, laptops with USB-C ports, or USB-C ports that are enabled with Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4. But yes, both of those technologies use the USB-C physical form factor port.
Okay, and then Michael, this one's for you. What is the max power a Thunderbolt dock and supply to a higher power mobile workstation? And there are some laptops with larger GPUs that come standard with 190 watt plus power adapter, like a HP ZBook Fury with an A2000 GPU.
Yeah, that's definitely a very power hungry laptop. So currently right now with Thunderbolt, it's limited to 96 watts of power to the host. But in future updates, hopefully with the new PD power delivery spec of 3.1, they introduced an extended power range feature, which actually could go up to 240 watts of power over the Type-C cable. But currently right now, the laptop would be limited from a direct connection from a dock to only 96 watts.
Okay, good.
They are considering that for the future. It's definitely been a point of contention with Thunderbolt docks. They want to make sure you get maximum power for the power users.
All righty, thank you, sir. Okay, well, I think we're a few minutes over time, so we'll go ahead and wrap there. Sorry for those couple of questions we didn't get to. Maybe our panelists can respond live with those that are left while I wrap up. But first, Michael, Malcolm, thanks for being here. I appreciate all your insights. It's great content. And of course, you in the audience, thanks for your time today. I appreciate, we know it's valuable. Thanks for spending time with us to learn about these topics. Like I said, there will be a survey. Let us know what you'd like to hear about in the future. And of course, you can also post in that survey if you want to talk to one of our experts directly, or if you have a question about today's topic or others, or hit us at community.startech.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.